Welcome back to the Disrupt Education podcast. I'm still in the Midwest of the United States. Where are you at, Allie?
Well, I may have crossed an ocean, Peter. I'm in Italy right now.
I'm not jealous at all. At all. So, but no, you are overseas. It's amazing. We're going to do actually a couple of these where you're in Italy. And I think it's really cool because when we start to unpack our own stories, which is going to be coming up here a little bit, the amazing learning that you get to do outside of the classroom, outside of being in education for a year, maybe longer, who knows what's going to happen. But so stay tuned, peeps. Allie's going to tell us a lot more about Italy, I know. So, but we are lucky to have a guest today, Maureen O'Shaughnessy. You are not the. This is the second time you've been on the Disrupt Education podcast from Education Evolution, and there's so much more there. That was a very, very weak intro. So I'm going to give you an opportunity here to kind of give an intro to our listeners of who you are and what you're all about and how you are changing education.
Okay. Well, I am a career educator, school administrator, a lot of years overseas, raised my girls doing 2-year hops around the world in international schools and brought them back for high school and could not find the right fit. We tried 6 or 7 models, and one daughter has autism ADHD, just needs a little extra TLC. The other's jumped a grade, fierce, and wants a voice and wants a reason. I just helped them graduate early and decided to go ahead and create what I wish had been there for them. And we're in year 10 as a micro school where it's learner driven and they have that voice and they get the extra TLC or to go at a turbo pace. And I've written a book about others creating micro schools or schools within schools. I have the Education Evolution podcast that I think we're about 130 episodes in, where I'm just highlighting crazy cool stuff that is everywhere because there's not a formula, but all of us need to be stepping forward. And these folks inspire me and keep me growing. And here I am back with 2 innovators. This is super.
Yeah, we knew we had to have you on this series because so this series has kind of evolved. And for those who have been here from the start or are just jumping in on this episode, what started as an idea between Peter and I is this idea of like going beyond the score and how to connect academia to reality. I think actually, when I think back to like where this idea came from, it was from your keynote from the June conference Beyond Multiple Choice, because that was just after Peter, like I had heard you in that. And then Peter and I started talking about this series and we were just like, what are our experiences? And then it just kind of was like, okay, well, what are other people's experiences? And then now we're coming in this full circle moment with you, I feel like, in this series of what does it mean, to kind of like be a disruptor in the education and go beyond the score. You kind of teased that out with like, why you created the micro schools and everything. But when you think about that, what comes to mind? Just with that opener, like what does it mean to be a disruptor? What does it mean to go beyond the score and connect academia to reality?
I think it means being fierce and passionate and taking it in that direction. It might be wilderness for somebody. There's not a formula, but for me, it's human centered. It's like, hello, my daughters, these students are not widgets. Who says everybody that's been alive 16 years and 2 months should be at this level? And with other widgets that have been on the shelf the same amount of time makes me crazy. And I'm about how do we see the individual and how do we listen deeply and form relationships, use neuroscience that says, hey, if we're not feeling safe, ain't no learning happening. And then we have to feel belonging and then we can get to the frontal lobe. So why don't we use neuroscience, care for our students, form relationships, and really turbo forward? So that's my passion.
I love that. I know the backstory. I will actually connect our first conversation because there was a lot in there as well. I got to just any administrator out there or educational, Maureen needs to be the keynote at your place because, and I just do want to give you that shout out because there's a lot of people who are passionate, but there's a lot of people who are passionate and do. And you're definitely one of those. And please talk to so many more. Find the money where is being filtered in the schools doing it the wrong way, and let's change that. I mean, let's go. So that's pretty amazing. I want to also then kind of chat real quick about the student centered piece. It was interesting today. I bring it as much as I can in the public school system. I know our students are burnt. We have those conversations. We take time to reflect. I've been posting about that over the last couple of months. One of the things that was interesting today, and I haven't asked this question, is I asked our students, I'm like, okay, so if so many of you could learn still remotely, how many of you would want to do this? And this wasn't like a Monday morning and first period, I'm tired answer. This was an afternoon, and it was actually today when we were recording this, and about 35 to 40% of the students roughly raised their hands. Wow. What do you suggest, in your expertise, help us? Where do you go from there? Because I'm like, I feel for these kids. I think we're leaving out, the things that you see, especially in a traditional system. Yeah, we're widgeting kids and we're keeping them there. What are some of the first things that we can start to do to break down these silos, whether the silos are between, and I'm looking at it from a high school aspect, but the silos between different like English, math, or whatever. Why are they not working together? And or why are we not working with students on the way they really, the environments that they thrive in? And what do we need to do?
Wow, that's multi-tiered. I want to respond first to your students.
Yeah.
If a third of them are saying yeah, let me dial it in, then I'm wondering what value aren't they finding in being in person? If I'm just going to sit around and listen to teacher after teacher after teacher, why not do it in my jammies, with my dog? So then the opposite of that is, what would it take for them to want to be on campus? And we know that one of the huge motivators for adolescents is peers. So it doesn't mean having 2,000 kids in the school. If you're all sitting quietly and then rushing to the next class and jostling at the lockers, that's not, and your best friend's on lunch 1 and you're on lunch 3. It's not really relational. So how can we do that value add that's super hard remotely? How can we have that relational piece? How can we have interactive classes where kids are doing readers theater and putting on different roles, or cross age, and they're designing a social studies unit that they're going to go teach to the 5th grade at the elementary next door? How can we add in those human components that take showing up for, that take that collaboration, that are actually fun and playful? How can we add movement? Because remote or sitting in a class, if we're just sitting, we're not engaging, and kids need to be moving. So I would want to respond to those students. What would it take to want to come to school? Why do you think online is your first choice? So I'd start there. And then any systemic change we want, if we want our teachers to talk together and to plan together, we have to have a system that supports that. And when I was a leader in larger schools, getting a common prep time was like the holy grail. It's like, what? And we've really worked hard in my micro school to build in the common prep and the early release time to have really good conversations together every week. But we're not going to create if we don't have time to do it together. And I love Angela Watson's 40-hour work week. She is such a fierce educational advocate. And she's saying, guys, do 100%. None of this quiet quitting business where you're just, dialing it in, but set your boundaries. Do it at school. Educators have for too long been told, oh, go home and grade for 3 hours. That's what you're supposed to do. And I don't see doctors and dentists and architects taking their work home for another 3 hours and working for free. So we can't tell teachers, oh, in your off hours, go catch a beer with the English teacher and do something interdisciplinary. We have to create those pockets of time together during the school day if we want interdisciplinary to happen. And that's the simplest silo. And then we have to really create a lot of systemic changes to get community and school talking, because ideally, if you look at Education Reimagined, they have really been thoughtful about what the ideal education should look like. And it's 24/7. It's in a school building. It's out of a school building. It's everywhere. And right now, communities might do, oh, we've got a youth group or we've got a boys club, but they're silos again. So we have to think differently and have resources for those conversations and those collaborations to happen.
I have to ask if there, I don't know, the full dialogue, and other people may not who have heard your previous episode with Peter. So if you already talked about micro schools, for those who aren't familiar, right, and this kind of goes in with the series here of like, what purpose do schools serve, and kind of this, like, why create this micro school model? What are the benefits of it? That a traditional model that I was in, Peter's in, most educators are in, like, that you see as kind of shifting that pendulum to provide some of the things that you're talking about.
Yeah, I created my first micro school as a school within a school where we had 700 kids in each grade of high school. We had a 3-year high school, and we're waiting to have funding to build a third high school in the district. And the school within a school was just a way to be small, interdisciplinary, hands-on, relational, and we had like 20 some portables. So for us to have 4 of them, we were able to finagle. Small just means, to me, a better chance to get to know the individuals and a better chance to step away from bureaucracy. When I have 1,000 kids, I'm going to have detentions when kids are late. I'm going to have a discipline system. I can't stop and listen to that individual kid's story and like, oh my gosh, you had to get your brother out of the house again this morning because your mom worked all night. Okay, how can we help you? And I get to do that in my micro school. And it could be just as valid of a story in a school of 1,000, but who gets to be the one that sees and hears and validates that learner? And so bureaucracy usually means discipline and control, which is the opposite of relational and really unpacking what's going on. And through that, how we can best reach out and connect with that learner and help them find learning to be meaningful. So small to me is just that intimacy and that ability to be humane and connect. It's not that there's a certain number that's a magic number. It's just, I haven't been able to do it in big schools. And when we have schools within schools or micro schools or choice schools, I see that happening more readily.
There's so many stories where I see, and I've had conversations just in my class with students, and so unfortunately so many times, like I get to see the kids 40 to 50 minutes a day, it's a hectic, we all know that. And so many of them are like, wow, thanks for listening,
Yeah.
And, it's interesting because we teach an elective. I have a wonderful team, of co-teachers in business where I teach. And we're growing like crazy. And it's funny because I think it's starting to spark, but I'm just waiting. Like, I mean, the board brought us up and it was nice, because our internship classes, and we went from 2 to 5 in 1 year. And we really,
wow.
The reason is mostly, it's not all us. It's because the kids want to get out. They want to experience. I think we learned this with the 3 students that we talked to, Allie, Noah, Caden, and Olivia. Like, they want to show, they want to connect. So that goes along to my next question is, what's going on with community partnerships? Why are big entities, schools, is it just control? Is it like fear to let people in and see what's really going on? Obviously, in a micro school, you have an opportunity to really open up doors. But in your experiences, what are some of the things that you've seen and that maybe we can help people start to pull down those walls?
I don't even think it is a fear. I think it's like, oh my gosh, we are trashed, whether we're superintendents or principals or department heads or teachers. So it's like, yeah, that's another nice idea, but who's going to do it when? So I think it has to be incentivized. It has to be, or a model. We have to look who out there, like P-TECH is doing a great job of partnering with a key business. And they're in the school teaching the real world applications to algebra and then providing paid internships and helping kids get AAs and have paid jobs, not burger flipping job, but paid jobs while they're going through college. So we have to find those models that are doing it well because they have taken the time to foster that business relationship, and they've focused usually on one business for that Dallas high school or one business in DC. And we we need to piggyback on successes because it's hard work to get relationships. And I think on the other side, the community businesses will be saying, lovely idea. Who's going to pull it off? And oh my God, what do I know about teenagers? Scary, you know?
Definitely a bit scary. It's interesting. So I've shared this piece on a different episode about how the school district that I worked for had like a community liaison, and they retired and they're not replacing that position. And they just spent, like 5 or 6 years building this capacity. But because it's a huge school district, right, when they're looking at their bottom line, they're kind of like, well, how do we justify this? And to that's one of the pieces that Peter and I discuss pretty regularly, is like the pace of like a large system. It's the big bureaucracy. It can take like a long time for things to get done. What's your experience in a micro school in terms of change and adaptability and being able to kind of meet kids where they're at? Or like, how is that flow like a lot different? If like a kid wants to partner with a community, like, are those systems in place to make it happen? Or do you still kind of face those same challenges of a big bureaucracy, like a bigger school district?
I think there are always going to be the challenges. Like right now, I'm working with a student, a new senior, and he would like to do woodworking and perhaps do a trade after high school. So to get him out, we're looking at Big Picture Learning has a great model where you do informational interviews and then you do some job shadowing. And then if it's going well, you see if you can turn it into an internship. And we have Wednesdays for experiential learning and service projects. So it'd be a great time to peel off 11th and 12th graders. And we started doing that last year. But right away, it's like we have to check, like Humane Society in the past, they can't take anybody under 18 because of their liability, so, and he's woodworking and he does crafting on his own and works on wooden round wheel kinds of wood carving. So he's experienced, but he's talking about working with implements that are sharp. It's not like a real estate office where he's maybe working on a keyboard or out and about. So I don't know the liability as we get further into this and help him, it may determine whether or not a company feels comfortable. So it takes that position that they cut, that, hey, if you can't do it, who do you know? Or, hey, is somebody's grandpa doing this in a back shed and doing it, just kind of a one-off that could still be a great mentoring place? Or who's retired that could maybe show them how this is done at a community center? It takes somebody who has the time and the connections to figure out how to make it work, not can it work, but how can it work? And it's not going to be that teacher. It's not going to be Peter who's managing all of these internships. It's building, 20 different relationships with woodworking companies. So it's so tricky. We try at our school and we love it when it's like, yeah, of course we can. It also takes the kids getting clear. They have to, that's why we do the informational interviews first. Like, ask them where they got started. What would you recommend? What are some things you do? I've done this. What might be a next step? Start out by conversation, because like all of us, teens don't know what they don't know. Yeah. So I got that overseas, Allie. I lived overseas a lot. And oh my gosh, I didn't know, that you can't have your elbow on the table at dinner in one culture, and you're not supposed to have your hands in your lap in another culture. All of these things you don't know. You can't take a free right turn after a stop in Peru, or the police pull you over. Now I know, so our teens don't know. So they have to ask good questions of caring adults and get some guidance, and then hopefully end up in that coveted internship to see, is this something I might want to do after high school?
I'm not even going to ask what happened in Peru now, but I will tell you, I do like that. And that model is very difficult. I've seen, even in the public system early on, I can't remember, I'll see if I can remember his name, but he did this for a one-day event where they had to place over 1,000 kids in the community, and it was unbelievably tough. But it happened, but it was just one day, right? And of course, some people didn't get placed where they wanted to be, and there's a lot of challenges with that. I think one of the things that we try to do as much as possible in the stagnant system where we have rigid furniture is to help the student really try as much as possible to own that as early as possible. With that being said, I kind of wanted to, ask you what are some of the coolest, maybe the greatest things that you've seen over the last year or so that you have even done in your micro school that is something that you want to share out to say, hey, we did this. What is some of those things that you want to kind of give a shout out for?
Well, relationships are so huge. A week and a half ago was our third week of school, and we got back to our pre-pandemic week 3. We're a brand new community with 11 to 19-year-olds. We're going camping for a week. No parents for those timid little 6th graders, no electronic devices for all the rest of them. We are community. We're going to work together. We're going to create together. That to me, made 100% of the students attend, not 100% made it the whole week. That's okay. Success has so many different definitions, but just that willingness to try and that communal value of having collective time and parents saying, heck yes, we're going to get that. We're going to make this happen. Community support. There's a wilderness WTA. I forget what it stands for, but they have a lending library. So they gave us rain gear, extra tents, kitchen kits, so we get things loaned from the community so that it's accessible for everybody. So to me, that was grueling. To set up and run, you got to get the U-Haul because that's where we put the extra gear and all the food, and the kids do a shopping trip on the way up. So we have to find a way to store the food that they bought and that they had to stay within their budget and that they're going to use to cook on the second day. To me, that's a wild success. And it says relationships and learning happening outside of the 4 walls, outside of an expert dispensing wisdom on geography or physics. To me, that was a huge hooray. So that's one that comes to mind recently.
Is incredible. That's the kind of stuff that when I think Peter and I were dreaming up this series, we're really thinking about like, how do we take school outside of school? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and thinking outside the box while inside the box. And I think a lot of the work that you do and have done, really, really does touch on that. So kind of going back to just like you talked about your daughters and how and like their journey and how you created basically what you thought you wish they would have had. Right. So what purpose, like on a big scale, do you think school serves or it should serve, that you're trying to build in the work that you do and have committed to?
So I think a role it serves right now is daycare, babysitter. No, I'm not saying that in a derogatory way.
No,
if
true.
I'm off working, I know my kids are safe. I know they're being fed, so I know that physical safety, physical care is happening between these hours. So I think that's always one role. And we need that. We need if we're going to go off and be a police officer or a secretary, dentist, we need to know our kids are being taken care of so we can do our roles in society. So that's definitely one aspect that schools take. I think we all want, I saw this in North Carolina, they had written out their rural school, what they wanted their, I think it was 25-year-olds to be, they wanted them to be contributing members of society. They wanted them to know and use their gifts, to know that they were welcome back in the rural community. There were all of these things. We're supposed to be the launch pad into successful, happy contribution to society at age 18, which is such a joke, because 18, we still have a whole nother decade of frontal lobes being developed and say, okay, you guys are done. Go off and earn your own living. Other cultures laugh at us. I remember I was a college student studying in Spain and they're like, why do you guys waste all that money moving out of home? I will live with my parents until I get married at 40. And I was like, horrified, but our whole culture is like, yes, you've done it, go out, you're an adult. And then a year or two out, kids are like, oh my God, this is just drudgery. Every penny I make pays rent. When other cultures are like, or you stay at home and you have no rent and you have a life. So I think this whole idea that we launched them at 18 creates this fallacy. And that's where, Peter, where you're saying, hey, what do you want to do? And hey, let's go try it now and kind of start to think, what might it look like next? Instead of it's just this assembly line, finish high school and then 4-year college, forget 2-year college. That is not good enough. My child is a success, and that means 4-year college, which is what our culture has told our parents to believe. And they feel shame over a trade school or the military or something where our kids are amazing and successful. We've defined it so narrowly. And we think about all of our friends, and many of them don't have that 4-year college degree and are amazing and successful. Why would we say a different standard applies to our 18, 19-year-olds? So I think that we have a fallacy that we finish them off and send them out at age 18 and they're done and they should be ready to handle life. It's like, oh my God, my 20-somethings are in regular contact with me. I'm still an ATM at times, and they're a work in progress, as we all are.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I have a senior in high school and a freshman in high school right now. And yeah, they're very different people. And it's very interesting to see, them go through this process. The transition will be interesting. I mean, for my son. But you're right. There's at least 4 more years of frontal lobe work and just so much that's happening there. Sometimes I look back on my life, and I don't know about you, Allie, but I'm thinking how the heck did I do that? Because I did jump into, God, I had barely 18 when I did it. And I was just like, what's going on? But I wanted to round out here and ask, obviously one of our questions is always if you could design your own educational system. Well, you have. So I wanted to kind of extend, what's next? Where do you see this going? And how do you see maybe some next areas where you're looking into for micro schools or your micro school in general?
The problem with micro schools, because I've had a couple of venture capitalists talk to me and hey, how can we team? How can we scale this? And I see this when I look at other schools that are innovative and founder driven. When the innovator leaves the school, keeping it going sometimes can be a challenge, and scaling and replicating, it's hard because each of these is really about a person's heart and what they're passionate about and pouring into it. So really, it's not about what my micro school, it will continue to use different resources and opportunities. We just moved into a yoga space and have our own leased space that's super fun for our middle school kids on the Seattle campus. So opportunities come and we snag them and have a work party to cover the yoga floor and move on. But what needs to be next is for us to acknowledge what we've learned during the pandemic. And I think we knew it before, but could kind of pretend like we didn't and do a little bit of that head in the sand. Education is not accessible in the same way to everybody. Education is not relevant for a lot of kids. Anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, all of this is huge. So what needs to be next is access to relevant, engaging, tailored or personalized education, meeting every kid where they are and moving them forward. I think on an exciting note, recently on an interview, I got to interview Wes Delavola, and he's of National Geographic, Smithsonian. He started Meridian Learning, and he is really into XR and created for the Smithsonian. It was just but that, when he was talking to me about how that could truly level the playing field, how all students around the US could scuba dive in Palau. Everybody, it's not suddenly who's that affluent that might have permission to go to that island that is so remote. And so, there's a waiting list. It's no, everybody can raft the Grand Canyon. Everybody can be, so what's next, I think, in an exciting way, although terrifying because I am not the tech generation. I am not a tech native, but it's XR. It's whoa, what can we be doing? And how can we be making this learning just something awe-inspiring. The Smithsonian is leading the way on parts of that. And so what's next is taking technology and intentionally using it for good, not for the latest phone version that's going to generate more money. Do we really need 20 cameras on this and the capacity to flip it and twist it? Or could we take that and say, we're going to put a solid chunk into really opening up experiential? And yeah, I'm not in the water at Palau, but I am feeling all of that. Yeah. How can we take what we know about technology and extend reality, extend learning? And that's going to engage some kids like, oh my gosh, so now what's marine biology? Now I want to know. Where before it's like, yeah, am I going to take regular biology or marine biology? Which science class? Now it's like, oh my God, that was a miracle. I want to know more. So that's the excited me saying that's what could be next. Come on, world.
I absolutely love that. And to your, just to temper maybe your fear of tech, because I was like, whenever I fear like something new, I go back to this principle that it really only takes 20 hours, really 4 hours of concentrated effort to learn something new. So if you are, and for anybody who's like, oh, like I don't know about the next new thing, 20 hours is not really that much time to do it. And really 4 is usually more than enough to feel like, oh, I could go the rest of the time to kind of master it. And anyway, that was my little side note.
Yes, good point.
How can people connect with you? Obviously, please, if you are in charge of any sort of educational world where you can get speakers in and people to present, you do want to listen to this next part, because how can people connect with you, Maureen, and learn more?
Absolutely. You can go to educationevolution.org and just click and we'll find time to talk. I'm excited. I get to speak in San Francisco next month. I spoke in Malaysia remotely to graduate students on a Sunday night last month. And it was just super fun because they want so much and they need jobs. They can't get jobs. And it's like, oh my gosh, come to the United States. We have jobs. So please reach out. And if I can offer any resources, and I have some great podcasts, including Peter on there, and would love to just share resources, because together we can really make the difference that our youth deserve.
Awesome. Final thoughts, Allie?
Well, this episode was international. I think it was meant to be, because I think one of the themes, especially at the end, what we're looking forward, is that we need this interconnectedness. We need to kind of go beyond like the physical school building. And I just love the story that you shared, Maureen, about like you actually took your students out into the wilderness. And that's so powerful. And it really starts with seed to just kind of like grow outward from there. And we don't know what we don't know. And I'm just really glad that we got to have you all here on this Beyond the Score series.
Right.
Thank you both. And it's so good seeing you again.
Yes, awesome. And I think it's funny because I don't think we even mentioned score at all or grades in this entire podcast. I'm going to close it out right there. We went way beyond the score. Maureen, thank you so much for being here with us. Allie, thanks for jumping in from Italy late at night. And
yes.
For Disrupt Education, I'm Peter Hostrasser. We'll see you next time.